some numbers for you.
What's going on,
guys.
Chaz? Tell us.
We got some big numbers to share with the 94 Niners. And when I say big, I mean like really big, because the housing market, the market as a whole, has hit a new record.
So what's this? This is the total value of all real estate in the country? Is that what it is?
Yes, the total value of all real estate in the country hits $49.6 trillion.
That's so big, it's hard to even imagine how much that is.
But the crazier part is that's up 6.6%. So rates aside, inventory aside, home prices are continuing to go up, and we are up 6.6 year over year, up to 49.6 trillion. But that's not the story in every market in the U.S. There's some markets that are not growing. They're actually losing.
Chaz, did you know if you took 46 trillion $1 bills and you stack them end to end, how far do you think they would reach in the solar system? You think they'd reach the moon?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm gonna go with Mars.
I heard this the other day.
I'm gonna go with Mars.
Past Saturn.
Past Saturn.
Yeah.
So $49.6 trillion would take us past Saturn.
Yeah.
$1 bills.
Yeah.
Well, there's a fun fact.
That's how big the number was. I was listening to a podcast the other day about the national debt, which I think is 35 trillion.
Right.
And they were saying it would go past Saturn. So this is 46 trillion. So it might even.
So we're going to Uranus.
You're like basically almost out of the solar system.
Yeah.
That's how big of a number that is.
Wow. Just to put that in perspective for you, like try and think about how far that is. That would take a space shuttle months to travel. Years. And all we have to do is just line up our debt.
Yeah, I mean, it takes 4 years to get to Mars. I mean, Saturn's like way past Mars.
That.
Yeah.
Well, there's a little fun fact for you. So we're telling you how much the housing market is now worth, and we're also telling you if you took dollar bills in the amount of 49.6 trillion, you'd be well past Saturn, potentially on your way to Uranus.
Yeah, $1 trillion is a huge. I mean, $1 billion is a big number, and then a trillion is. What is a trillion? Is it it's 1,000 billion, I think is what it is, right? It was a billion times 1,000 is 1 trillion, I believe.
Yes. Yeah. Oh no, 100 billions is a trillion.
100 billion.
100 billions. So like 100 billion.
Yeah.
Times 10 would be a trillion.
Yeah. Okay.
So so
1,000.
1 billion
times 1,000. Yeah. Okay.
More impressive is that over the past decade, the total value of U.S. residential properties. So I want to be very clear. We're not talking commercial buildings or anything like that. Residential properties has more than doubled, growing nearly 120% from 22.7 trillion in June 2014.
So I think it's really interesting that the national average still went up by that much, because one of the things we've talked about on this show a lot is that, in Connecticut's got 5 metro areas that are in the top 20 real estate
hottest
markets. And a big part of that is because we don't have enough homes for sale in Connecticut for everybody that wants one. And that's been contributing to, home prices continuing to go up, supply and demand. But we talk about how some other parts of the country, California, Florida, Texas, are starting to see more increase in supply and values, not so much going down, but, not going up as much as they were, kind of during the COVID times. But yet still, on a national basis, the total value of all real estate is going up over 6% year over year. Pretty incredible. And there's a lot of folks out there, that have been saying since, 2019, I'm going to wait for real estate values to come down. I mean, there's been very few times in history where real estate values have gone down. In the long run, they tend to go up. And that's why, the average, net worth of a homeowner is almost 75 times the average net worth of a renter.
Yeah.
Get into a house, you lock in your mortgage rate, you lock in your payment on that mortgage. Every month your payment's going down. You're, on a long-term average, home values are going up. And your leverage too. Keep in mind,
leverage, that's the big part.
Fancy people throw around this term leverage, but what does that actually mean? What that means is, let's say you bought a house for $100,000 and you put 10% down, right? We'll just make the math simple.
Yep.
What's 10% of 100,000? 10 grand, right? Now, if you put 10 grand in the stock market and you got a 10% rate of return on that 10 grand, how much would your profit be if you put 10% rate of return on 10 grand?
$1,000.
$1,000, right? So if you put, $10,000 in the stock market, you get a 10% rate of return. You're gonna have $11,000.
Right.
Okay. Now, if you use that $10,000 to buy a $100,000 house, and let's say that $100,000 house goes up in value 6%, how much did that house go up in value year over year?
106,000.
6,000, right? So that's what leverage is, because the value of the asset that you acquired with that money that you had is greater than the actual amount of money. When that asset goes up or down in value, your rate of return is multiplied. So if you buy a $100,000 house with a $10,000 deposit, that $100,000 house goes up in value 6%. Even 4% would be $4,000.
Still more than your 10% in the stock
That's
market.
a 40% rate of return, which is, a lot of folks don't realize that. And that's what happens when you have home ownership. If you have $20,000, I can't think of anything else that, the average Joe, U.S. American can do with $10,000 that's going to get them a rate of return of
4 to 6%.
$5,000 a year rate of return on a $10,000 investment. And then it continues to go up. So the longer that you have that real estate, the more you get exponential growth. So it starts off as a $100,000 house, and then 10 years later, it's a $200,000 house now.
Right.
So 10 years, let's say you own the house 10 years, and it goes up another 5%. Well, what's 5% of 200,000? It's $10,000.
Right.
So the first year you got it, it's going up maybe $4,000 or $5,000 a year. But 10 years into it, now it's going up $10,000 a year. Then you own it for another 10 years. Now you've owned real estate for 20 years. Now it's a $400,000 house. So if it's still going up 5%, now you're getting $20,000 a year in appreciation.
Easily.
And then let's say you stay there for 30 years. Now it's an $800,000 house, because what we've seen is over the last 10 years, property values have doubled. I don't know if we can count on that every 10 years, but historically, even if you look at a 50-year average, real estate on average over the last 50 years going up over 4%. Yeah.
It's been 10% every decade, even during 2000 to 2010.
Yeah.
The great financial crisis.
That's leverage.
You're looking at a 10% rate of return on average, decade to decade. Obviously, this 2020 to 2030 is going to be the anomaly. But yeah, just to kind of piggyback off what Brian was saying. So the top 10 fastest growing metros in total home values, Connecticut's got a couple on the list. I'll just run through the list here quick for you guys. Number 1, Brunswick, New Jersey, 13.3% increase. Number 2, Newark, New Jersey, 13.2. Anaheim, California, 12.1. New Haven, Connecticut, 11.8. Charleston, South Carolina, 11.8. Bridgeport, Connecticut, 11.3. San Jose, California, 11.2. Hartford, Connecticut, the hottest market in the country, according to Realtor.com, 10.8%. Camden, New Jersey at 9, Albany, New York at 3. But Connecticut has 3 in the top 10 for fastest home growth value. So if you live in any one of those counties and you're a 94.9er listening to this, hold on to that asset, because you're gaining extreme leverage, in the great words of Brian Skelly.